All right, so veterans of our class will know that every time we do one of these, we post our presentations to the Mankato Computer Technology website, and that is at mankatotext.com. So if you go to that or just Google search Mankato Computer Technology, presumably will be one of the first ones. Then on the front page here, if you go to the About section, it'll give you this pop-down menu, and at the bottom of the pop-down menu is Presentations. Now, if you go into Presentations, then you're going to see today's presentation is right here. If you click on that, it's going to open up the PDF for you. And from here, you can print it. You can save it by hitting this button down here or right here to download it to your computer. And if you really get ambitious, all of our presentations going back for a couple of years are on the website for your easy access. So what you want to do is go to mankatotext.com, go to the About section, Presentations, and then you can go ahead and click on the digital photography one.
Great job as always, Colin. Thanks.
Oh.
So this is I wouldn't say this is not an easy class by any means, but luckily we have somebody that's a professional in this industry to help get us through it. So we'll talk about Pat here in just a minute. We'll give him a good intro. But the thing I like about digital photography is, I don't know how many of you have been paying attention. There's a new documentary that came out on Netflix and talks about these dangers of social media, and we talk a lot about computer safety, and we talk a lot about scams and all the dangerous ways that there are to be online. And so one of the things that I really like about digital photography is that, other than the things that we've talked about learning to back up your data, learning to protect your data, and how to stay safe, I really feel like it's a unique way to get the media from the devices that we carry around with us every day to a place that we can look at them, edit them, save them, share them, and use them that way. So I think the hardest part, which Pat, we haven't really met online, we have, but I think the hardest part is to explain for somebody that does this every day and for a living, and all these processes for them that have become automatic on how they take their thousands of pictures and how they put them into a folder and a document and share them and edit them, to break down those small steps into someone that maybe has never taken a digital picture before, or has never moved their digital pictures from one source to another, or even moved them from their camera to their computer, or moved them from their computer to a hard drive. So all the things that we talk about protecting your data and backing up your data will come into this. But and I know there's got to be traditionalists out there, and maybe Pat, you can talk about this a little bit about what it was like when there was 35 millimeter film and developing and the tips and tricks that you could do with that stuff compared to what you can do now with digital photography. But I mean, I see some of the things that come out with these new iPhone cameras, and I'm just blown away at how snappy and how good the portraits look right away with all the digital effects they can just put into there. But and I look at how many pictures now I have of my kids who are 12 years old, and how many I have of my my youngest kid versus how many I have of my 12-year-old kid. And just because she was around when before iPhones were created and before we just carried a phone with us everywhere. So I think it's really cool, but I definitely think it's something that we want to work on to make sure that you're being safe, that you're taking care of the images, and not only just getting the best of your images, but that you keep them and are able to use them in a safe and creative way. So with that, Pat, if you want to jump right into your introduction, Colin and I will be here for any technical support if you need any at all. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And, as much of the slides as you want to walk through, this is the point where I kind of asked, I have to know your comfort level, which I'm assuring you're amazing at this. But I usually just try to ask everybody in the class what they want to get out of it and what they want to learn how to do, and give them an opportunity. And maybe you'll talk about that and what we want to present, or maybe it's something we can address quickly now. But I leave the chat bar open, and Colin and I can kind of mediate if anybody has any chats or discussions they want to do. But at this time, if anybody wants to post a question or what they want to learn from this class, or they want to go ahead and speak out to Pat. I know it's intimidating with the microphones and the mute and the unmute, but this would be a great time to talk to Pat about what we want to learn in this class. And Colin and I are here for any of your technical support needs.
And
Sounds good.
Trevor, because we do have a couple of new people, do you want to tell them where the chat feature is and how they can utilize it?
Yeah, depending on, you should have probably a full screen presentation because I think Zoom does that automatically. But if you wiggle your mouse at the bottom of the screen, there will be 5 little icons that come up that say participants, chat, share screen, record, and reactions. The reactions is a fun way that if you want to give a thumbs up or a clappy hands, you can do that, and that doesn't, you don't have to unmic anything. But if you click on the little chat bar, it'll come up and you can put your chat positions. Good thumbs up, guys. I like that. And you can send a text message to everyone by clicking on the Everyone tab. Or you can click the Vine Faith in Action. That's just going to be Mike. Colin's on here. If any of you have been in the class before, Colin's our guy from Mankato Computer Tech who does all of the good stuff. Then everybody, all the other members are here, and there's Pat's names on there. And I'm on here as well. So you can click to just send one of us a message. You can send everyone a message, however you want to do it. But this is a great way to communicate without having to try to turn off your microphone and interrupt or multiple people talking at the same time. This is a great way, if that's intimidating to you, to communicate with the rest of us. So Mike's started a conversation, and that's what it looks like when it pops up. So it's a great way to communicate. It's a little intimidating, I know, to do these Zoom calls still, but if you want to ask anything, you can do it by unmuting and just asking us, or you can post it here in the chat bar, and Colin or I will be glad to facilitate, or you can go right to Pat, or you can send it to everybody, depending on where your comfort level is. So feel free to send a text message or a chat to us now if there's something you'd like to talk about specifically. Otherwise, we'll let Pat get started with his introduction, and we'll get moving.
Sure thing. Well, again, thanks for having me, you guys. I mean, as sad as it is to not actually be sitting in a room with you, it's good to be able to still do some of this kind of stuff. I really enjoy it. I get a lot out of it, and hopefully you guys will too. And as we go along, if there are questions, like Trevor said, go ahead and throw them in that chat, or as we go along, I'll kind of pause for a little bit and give everybody a chance to kind of soak some stuff in and think if they have questions, or if there's anything particular you want me to go over again. Like Trevor said, it can be a little bit daunting at first, but believe it or not, it's actually some pretty easy concepts, some pretty things we can do to make it a little easier for everybody to be able to take pictures, use the pictures they have, and save them so that they don't lose them the next time something goes awry. So a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm currently the chief photographer at the Mankato Free Press, and I put it as the Free Press Media because we do a lot of other publications other than the newspaper you read every day. We publish an arts and entertainment lifestyle magazine called Mankato Magazine. We do a business magazine called Minnesota Valley Business. We do a child and parent-oriented magazine called Kiddo. Plus a website that's just chock full of pictures. So if you do get an opportunity to go to our website, you'll see a lot more of my work than you see in the regular newspaper. But I've been a professional photographer for 24 years and feel lucky to have been in every single one of those. I took over for John Cross, who was at the Free Press for almost 40. And I'm sure a lot of you know John. So I have very big shoes to fill, and I still haven't filled them, and I don't know if I really plan to unless I'm just going to fill them with sand. So I started my photo career a long time ago taking aerial pictures of farms while I was learning to fly, and discovered that I really loved photography and thought, well, you know, I got to be able to make a living doing this somehow. This is really cool. So I went to St. Cloud State University here in Minnesota and learned the craft of photojournalism, which basically is taking photos and telling stories. So I kind of started out doing that, and back in the days when you were basically told not to drink any liquid in front of you as you processed film and used 35 millimeter film and made prints in a dark room with trays full of chemistry. So I've been doing it a long time, and obviously really enjoy it. So hopefully we can both kind of learn some stuff together and kind of figure out what we want to accomplish today. What I've got prepared, what I'm hoping is we can learn a little bit of the technical side of how to organize and save and edit some of the pictures you take, whether you're shooting with a point and shoot digital camera or your cell phone or whatever have you, that we can talk a little bit about some of the tips and tricks on how to save some of that stuff and be able to share them with other people. Whether you want to have prints made so you can hang them on the wall, or you want to email them to your children and grandchildren, whether you want to share them via Facebook or some other social media. Hopefully we can learn a few tips and tricks on how to do some of that stuff. I'll show some of the editing features of some of the programs I use and some of the more popular ones that are out there, to kind of give you an idea on how you can improve your pictures a little bit. Let's face it, every picture needs a little improving. I don't shoot a single picture without improving it at least a little bit. So hopefully I can show you some of the easy tips and tricks to make some of your pictures look a little better. And also kind of give you an idea of some of the things I do on a daily basis to make some of the pictures you see in the paper. This is a little bit about these are the steps we'll kind of go through, and this is kind of the stuff I go through every day. I kind of go through it on a fairly large scale. Just to give you an example, I shot 3 assignments for the Free Press today, and I have a little over 1,000 pictures to look through this afternoon. So I do this on a very large scale, but the basic procedure you see here in front of you is the one I apply every day. And I do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, if I do it the same way every time, it's easy for me to remember. I'm not trying to figure out, okay, now did I want to save this picture here, or where did I save this picture? How can I find it again? It's all done the same way every time. That really helps out when it comes time to find them later. You'll also note a lot of the stuff I'll talk about here tonight will involve kind of hedging your bets a little bit, being able to save your work in a way that if you do make a mistake, or more importantly, when you make a mistake, you have something to fall back on. You don't lose what you've done. That awesome picture of the grandkids won't go away. If you decide you want to try to crop it a little bit or make the color a little bit better, you're not going to lose that by following this procedure. Like I said, it gives you kind of an out. So why don't we kind of dive in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about what I do after I actually take the picture. There's a lot of different ways you can get a hold of your pictures. Most of us are taking them either with a cell phone or a camera, but you can also get them out of the memory card within the camera, or say someone emails them to you. The same procedure that I'm going to go through kind of applies to all of that. It's really about having a place to put them that you can search on your computer, or on your iPad, or on wherever you're saving your files, and being able to find it again. The big thing, especially for me who's shooting a large volume of pictures at a time, is to stay organized. I cannot stress that enough, that you really want to be able to stay organized. No matter how you choose to do things, and there's always 1,000 different ways to do them, you really want to be able to put things in folders and have those folders named in a way that you can find them again. I like to use a few different ways to refresh my memory on how to find a folder. So literally the first thing I will do when I get done shooting pictures is I'll make a folder for them. Once I create a folder, I'll right click and name it. And I typically name it the way you see it here in my example. I'll give it a year and a date, usually just when I shot it, and then some kind of 2 to 4 word description. It doesn't have to be very long, just long enough that when you go looking for those photos again, it will refresh your memory. In this example, I used 2017 for the year, and then 0921 for the day. In fact, I was up at Vine today taking pictures, so that example actually works out pretty true to form. I actually did name a folder this today. Then as I go along, if I get down the road a year, 2 years, 3 years, I know I was at a Vine event in 2017. All of those folders will stack up in 2017, and I could probably guess about what month. Let's say it was fall, so let's look September, October. The chances of finding that folder and the pictures within are very easy. Once I have a folder, I transfer my photos from wherever I got them from, whether that's the memory card in my camera, which is what I use most often, or plugging my camera directly into the computer with a cable, whether I got them from an email or a web page or my friend's Facebook page, whatever photos I'm trying to save, I'll click and drag them from one folder to another. And it's simply a matter of selecting the entire collection and dragging them from one folder to another. Let's see if my technical skill is advanced enough to be able to show you a little bit of that. So to show you a little, looks like I will have to do that. And there we go. So I have a pair of folders here. A folder of pictures and my empty folder for my Vine event. And it's simply a matter of selecting them all. And I'm simply just clicking on the mouse and holding it and dragging it all the way down the list and dragging it over to the new folder. And when I do that, you can see I'm on a Mac and a PC, but a PC looks very similar. You see a little red plus and it tells me how many images I'm dragging over. So I can make that comparison between the 39 at the bottom of the window down here and the 39 it says I'm bringing over. And I can be like, okay, it looks like I got all my pictures. Then when I let go of the mouse, it makes a duplicate of all those photographs. And you can see them all being copied into the folder. So now I have 2 copies. Remember what I was saying about backing up and covering yourself should you make a mistake? That is your first step. By doing this, I now have 2 copies of my folder, of my photos. One of them on the memory card or camera that I shot them on, and a second copy now is sitting on my hard drive. Questions about that at all? All right. So that is my first step in making sure that I'm not losing anything I have. I treat the photos that I've shot initially as my negatives, like you used to treat your negatives. You wouldn't want to throw those away. You wouldn't want to wreck them. You want to be able to use those forever and ever to continue to make pictures from. So I kind of treat these photos, these files, like negatives. I also wanted to show you a couple other ways to copy photos. One of them that I use fairly regularly is a program called Photo Mechanic. Now it's separate, that's a separate program from a lot of the other stuff you might use to look at or edit pictures. But I find it to be a very intuitive way to take care of my photographs. And it doesn't.
Can you talk a little bit more about where you would get that program, how much it costs, or if you recommend it for an average user versus somebody that does what you do?
You bet. The program is designed for photojournalists, but I often recommend it to amateur photographers or anyone who enjoys taking pictures on a regular basis. If you only occasionally take photographs, I wouldn't recommend it. It does cost $80, which is why I wouldn't recommend it if you only occasionally take photographs. But if you're if you're an avid photographer and you enjoy taking 30, 40 pictures of your grandkids at the pool, or if you're on vacation and you take 50, 60 photographs of Mount Rushmore while you're out in the Black Hills, this is a program I highly recommend. And I'll show you what it looks like. Let me do this here first. I'm going to start over like that. So you can kind of see. So here's our folders that we just created. What the program does is allows you to open any folder full of pictures you want and be able to move them around as you see fit. So what I can do is go under Open Contact Sheet in Photo Mechanic and say, all right, I want to open the folder full of pictures I just moved over. So there's the folder I just had that we just created. And there's all the pictures I shot. And if you look at the bottom corner, it says 39 pictures. There's all 39 pictures. If I want to move this picture from one place to another, I can copy it using the program's copy function and copy it anywhere I want to go. So if I want this photo someplace else, I can copy it someplace else using Photo Mechanic. The other feature I like about this is if I hit the little magnifying glass in the corner, I can get a bigger look at the photograph. I really like that when it comes time to picking one of those 35 pictures you shot of your grandkid at the pool. Obviously, for me, it's a little bit different dealing with large volumes of pictures. But I wanted to show you this in that there are other ways to deal with pictures, especially if you enjoy taking pictures and are dealing with larger numbers of photographs.
Pat, just on a couple of basic things I saw, like when you were selecting there was something you clicked on right before you clicked to move it, and it was to delete original from original location. I think was the box you unselected as you picked to move it.
Yes.
Just making sure that we clarify, like when you talk about, like for our average users, when it's like, this is kind of a cut, the difference between cut and paste and copy and paste. And sometimes when you're moving stuff, you can move it from the original location and it still stays in the original location. And sometimes when you move stuff, it will delete it from the original location. So I kind of like that you had the metadata box that popped up there. And then, so you said when you unclick that box because you don't want to move it and delete the original. But if we're not using a program like this, you also have to be very careful on that you do make sure that you're copying or that you're dragging, and that it does, verifying that it does stay in the original location, like you said, treating it as a negative versus the addition that you use. Because if you cut and paste versus copy and paste, different things can happen to the original. So just to be aware of that, even if it's not an advanced program, how you move it can affect what happens to the original.
And if you watch what the button does on the corner, as I select move or not move, it changes the word from copy or move.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, even right next to move photos, it says delete originals. So it's not going to make a copy for you if that box is checked.
Right.
Depending on what I'm doing, I will either move them or not move them. I highly recommend making copies, so having that button read copy. The other benefit this program has, if you do work in a lot of different pictures, you'll remember when we created the folder, with a name of what I took pictures of. In this case, I called it Vine Event. I can name all the pictures Vine Event with a number on them. So you'll see each picture will change its name to Vine Event 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That adds another level to be able to find your photographs. And that's another advantage to using this particular program.
Because otherwise the camera or the device that you're taking a picture of assigns that number to the picture automatically, right?
It's some very generic number. In my case, mine says PC1, but it just has a generic number on. You can see that number for the picture here. It doesn't really tell you what you took a picture of.
And that can get really confusing if the camera starts over at 1 every time you delete all the pictures of it. You could have PC1009 multiple times in different folders. You could have the same picture name in different folders, right?
Yes,
That's
and
where
if that photograph gets separated from the folder that you named, what is this?
Yeah,
It might be hard to find again.
right.
So yeah, I wanted to show you what this program looks like because of that. It's a good way to look at a fairly good number of pictures. Like this is 39 pictures. It's a pretty good amount of photographs. If you had to open up every single one of these to look at them and see what they look like and see if you wanted to print one or not, it might take you a little time. Where with this program, Photo Mechanic, you can look at all of your pictures at the same time. So I included information on Photo Mechanic as well as another program called Lightroom that I don't use very often, but a lot of my colleagues do here in the presentation if you're interested in taking a look and seeing what it looks like. One of the things I do like about Photo Mechanic as well is that they have a very helpful set of documentation on their website. It's written in plain language. It's easy to read. It's very intuitive. So if that's something you do decide to go with, there's support there for you.
Just to pop in here quick, just so folks know, there is a native photo editor in Windows 10 too. That's free if you're a PC user. It's certainly not as advanced or varied in its features as Photo Mechanic or Lightroom is going to be. But if we have a little bit of time at the end, we can go over how to use that photo viewer and editing software that's probably already on your computer if you're a Windows user.
Yeah, and that would be good. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you that because my computer at home is a Mac. So I'm stuck in one world though. I find more and more I use both.
There's always one Mac user in every crowd.
And if you don't know who it is, it's usually me.
Yeah.
Once you've made that copy, you want to make sure you save that someplace where you can find it again. A common way a lot of photographers used to save photos was to burn them onto a CD. It was very handy. You could label the CD and put it in an envelope with the title of the event on it. When you wanted to come back and look at those photographs again, it was all it was putting it back into the computer. As time goes on, it seems like computer manufacturers are less interested in including a CD drive on their computers. So I often recommend to people to use an external hard drive. The process is literally the same. Once you create that folder, you can drag that folder onto your external hard drive. And then it's there forever and ever and ever. The folder's always labeled, so you know what you've shot each individual time. And it has a lot larger capacity than just an individual CD. I use external hard drives all the time, and I organize mine even further yet than what we've talked about. I'll create a folder with a year, say 2017. Then within that folder, I'll put all the folders that have 17 at the beginning of them. And then I'll create a new folder for 2018, a new folder for 2019 until the hard drive is close to full. One thing I won't do is fill the hard drive. I find it to be a little dangerous. I also tend to not buy very, very large hard drives and put all of my photos on one hard drive. Again, like we talked about at the beginning, you really want to protect yourself so you don't lose these valuable negatives, so to speak. So I like to kind of spread that risk out a little bit. I shoot enough pictures that I will only put 1 year's worth of photographs on a hard drive. And even in my personal life, where my personal photos I don't shoot anywhere near as much as I do for my job, I still am apt to buy a hard drive that's appropriately sized, store 1 year's worth of pictures on a hard drive, and then move on again to the next year.
So
I just feel it's a safe way to go.
Just to give us an idea, like you told us about how many pictures. I mean, I can't remember. What did you say? 3,000 or 300 that you took for today? So I mean,
took about 1,000 pictures today.
A year's worth of pictures for you is probably a lot larger than most people. But what size hard drive would you say? And then Colin, I don't know if you can chime in with prices off the top of your head of where we're at for gigabytes and terabytes of storage space. But Pat, if you want to talk about the size that you would use for a year, or the size that you think you would use for a month, and about how many pictures that is. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head.
I could probably get pretty close.
Okay.
I typically, for my free press work, I typically buy a 4 terabyte hard drive. And that will store a little over 175,000 pictures. So those are the volumes I'm dealing with.
Okay.
You're shooting in RAW, right, Pat?
I'm shooting large JPEGs.
Oh, okay. So everybody's camera might be a little bit less nice than Pat's, so your resolution might not be as high. So you might be able to squeeze in even a few more thousand than Pat would be able to on his 4 terabyte.
Yeah, my personal work, for my personal stuff, I probably shoot probably about 10 to 15,000 pictures a year, just me having fun. And I typically buy a 1 or 2 terabyte hard drive for my personal stuff. That's, that would be more than enough for what the average user would need to store your photographs. I don't see a lot of questions in the chat. I hope I'm not overwhelming everyone.
Well, and Pat, the great thing about memory is that the cost has gone down considerably. I think you used to figure about what, $100 per terabyte?
Yes.
And that's
nowhere near that these days.
Yeah, the price of storage has come down significantly in the past decade. So nowadays you could get a terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes, for somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 or $50. If you're looking for a 4 terabyte drive, which most people probably don't need, but you'd probably be closer to 150 to 200, depending on what brand you're looking for and whether or not it's or what kind of technology is in there. There's different types of drives, so some of them are a little more expensive than others. But the for most people, a 4 terabyte is going to be overkill, I think.
I would agree. I would think 1 or 2 terabyte hard drive would be plenty for most people. And it's good to hear from a computer professional that I'm not overpaying for the hard drives I use every year.
So Pat, is that the timeline that you'd recommend, is annually as well, of like backing up? Like you would say, like within a year, that's kind of like your working window, and then like once a year is how often somebody should back up? Or do you have them on multiple devices throughout that year? Or
I carry my photos on 2 devices throughout the course of a year.
Okay.
And at the end of that year, I double check and make sure that all of my photos have copied over onto an external hard drive like I think they did. And then I remove them from the hard drive of my computer. So I will do that once a year as a clean and purge.
And you do that every time, though, when you take them off your camera to your computer, you verify that copy, and then the version on your computer becomes the negative?
Yes. Yes. And that way, like I said, you've always got a duplicate until you're confident you have them saved where you want them saved. It really protects you should something happen during that copy process.
And is your once a year just a giant, I don't want to say purge because that doesn't sound like the right word, but at the end, like on December 31st, you're like, all right, I'm going to copy from January 1st to December 31st all onto this hard drive, or do you do it month by month, or project by project, or season by season?
I definitely copy along the way. My personal work usually gets done every couple of months. My work for the free press, because it's such a higher volume, gets done more often. But even then, for my free press work, I'll often look at my hard drive every 3 to 6 months, just because there's so many photographs in play that about every 3 to 6 months, I'll look at the computer's hard drive and compare it with where I stored everything on the external hard drive. And if the two match up, I'll remove them from my computer.
Sure. Hey, Colin, can you interject real quick with how that safety applies to, like, for these hacks that are coming where people steal your pictures and then, or access to your pictures and then try to charge you money for them instead of losing them?
So there's, I think you're talking about ransomware,
yeah,
Trevor. So which is a kind of malware that puts a virus on your computer which goes through your files and encrypts everything so that you're unable to open it. Just basically locks all of your files. And at that point they say, you know, you have to pay us so many Bitcoin to get the encryption key to unlock your files. For a business, especially if they figure out that, you know, it's a dental clinic or an attorney's office or something like that, usually the ransom is going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. For consumers or just normal people, they usually try to squeeze about $500 out of you. So if your external hard drive is plugged into the computer all the time, there's a chance that ransomware virus could spread to the external hard drive and encrypt everything, both your backups and the originals that are on the computer. For most users, it's a good idea to do a periodic backup with an external hard drive and then unplug it. The other thing to consider is that for a lot of users who just have like an average amount of data and aren't dealing with tens of thousands of pictures in a given month, that you should really consider a cloud solution. And cloud backup is great because you can set it and forget it. These are things like OneDrive, iCloud, which is Apple's cloud solution. OneDrive is from Microsoft. Google has Google Photos, which will take all the photos automatically off of your Android phone because you're signed in with your Google account. So all you have to do is take a picture and it uploads that to a backup, or you can download a Google Photos app for your computer too to sync all your photos that way. Those are nice ways to go because you don't have to think about it. You can set it and forget it. And for people who are not as tech savvy, then you know it gives you an extra little assurance that all your stuff is going up to the cloud. I will say that if you have an automatic backup like that, that does not mean that you should neglect these steps of trying to sort your photos into and try to separate your edits and from your originals, because you might end up with a real mess where you can't find anything, and it'll just be a real mess in two places. Now, Google and Apple are both getting a little more advanced, where they're doing facial recognition and date tracking. So it'll use the metadata from your phone, for example, or your iPad if you're taking a photo. And once it goes up to their cloud services, it'll automatically place them into that date and time. It'll also scan through all your photos and find faces, and it'll use facial recognition to sort all your photos by who you're taking pictures of. So, which is a little bit creepy, but a little bit cool as well.
I wish it would go through the next 1,000 pictures I have to look through and be able to tell me who's in them. That would
With
make my
correct
life so
spellings.
much easier. Yeah, that would make my
Yeah.
life so much easier. But yeah,
just from an
definitely.
editing perspective and a safety perspective, I just wanted to kind of touch on that, how backing them up protects you from not only just having a negative version in a secure location, but can help prevent, you know, this ransomware situation as well. So having that routine, that practice, like you said, of, okay, I've been through this project, now I should back it up, keep it, not just wait till once a year and go, hey, on December 31st, I'm gonna back up 4 terabytes worth of photos to my hard drive and then unplug it.
Right. And I certainly recommend this process simply because, you know, like Colin mentioned, while you can back up those files and have that automatic backup going, and I would highly recommend that from a technology standpoint. From a photo standpoint, being able to take a little bit of control of your photos and put them into folders that have some labels that you recognize and be able to name photos in a way you recognize really makes a difference when it comes down to finding that photo of your grandson a year later, or finding that great photo from your trip to South Dakota. Really makes a difference then.
Yeah, if anybody's ever been like, oh, I got this great picture here, let me show it to you, and they do this for half an hour on their phone and they go, oh, I can't find it. Like, that's a great example of, like, you think you have it organized or it's by date and you're trying to scroll like, oh, when did I do this, or when did I do that, or how is this organized, and they can never find that really cool picture they wanted to show you. So that organization aspect of it's really cool. Otherwise, like Colin said, I'm totally guilty of, I have hot messes in several locations.
Yeah, and it is easy to do, and I think I kind of developed this process for myself a long time ago when I first started taking pictures, as a way to make sure I don't mess anything up in the process, but also to be able to give myself a shot at finding something down the road. It's very easy, and you don't have to really take that many pictures. It's very easy to kind of really get a mess going on, whether it be on your phone or on your camera's memory card, to have 4, 5, 6, 7 different events you've gone to and take pictures, and then say you lose that memory card. Now you really got a mess, and you've lost all those memories. And believe me, I've lost more than my share of assignments for the Free Press and others over the years. It's a gut-wrenching feeling, and not one I recommend anybody experience if you can avoid it.
So Colin, Renee posted a question, and this might be I mean, between you and Pat, I think you guys can both answer this very well, but just like, so Pat, what do you do with your external hard drive? And then Colin, what would you recommend on how the best way to get that external hard drive to the cloud?
My personal external hard drives get put on a shelf, and I plug them in at least once a year, if not more, just to make sure they're all working properly.
Yeah, I mean, some folks will put external hard drives in fire safes, which is a good idea if you're, if you're really worried about safeguarding the data. The problem with that is it makes you less likely to go and grab it and back your stuff up because it's in the safe and you have to go through all the trouble of unlocking it with a combination or whatever. For businesses, the industry standard is sort of one on-premise backup and then one cloud backup. So you would have an external hard drive backing up your systems, and then you would have a backup that sending everything up to a cloud location. So if we're going from the presupposition here that the data is still on your computer, but you're doing the backups to the external hard drive and then trying to get it onto the cloud, what the easiest thing to do is to start with that central location from your computer and to run the cloud backup program on the computer. You've got your external hard drive just in case the internet ever goes away. You know, it could be a passing fad. But if something happens to the external hard drive in your computer, like heaven forbid a fire or a flood, you've got your stuff backed up to the cloud.
Right.
Yeah. And my personal work certainly should have a second backup. My personal work does not. Our free press work does have, we do a 2 hard drive backup, and we store a set of hard drives offsite.
It went off.
Renee, does that answer all your questions? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Good.
There's also, Pat, I don't know if you can speak to this at all, but it's becoming much more common for digital cameras, especially the higher end ones, to have internet connectivity. So there's ways that you can, if you're on your home network, to have your, to be able to send things right off of your camera, or to back up your photos right away if you're connected to Wi-Fi.
Yes, there is. In fact, our higher end Nikon digital cameras do have Wi-Fi built into them. And Nikon offers a lovely service where you can upload your photos straight to Nikon and they will store them for you. The volumes I use it for, I can't do that, but I do know folks who have. I also know folks that will, if they're shooting in a studio setting or they're shooting from home, every photo they take will transfer directly to their computer. So they don't have to do that copy procedure we talked about at the beginning.
All right, we want to hit a little editing.
Good questions. Yeah, let's talk about a little editing, and I'll show you a little bit about what I do to photographs, to kind of just some basic cleanup techniques and some things you can do to make the photos look good after you shoot them. I'm gonna find a little bit better example to work with. That's not going to work for me, but let's take a look. We'll take a look at my puppy photos again. Let's do it that way.
How
So
were these
here's
just for fun today, or was this a project, or were you just at the gas station like, I need 39 pictures to use tonight?
I was at the gas station and saw this adorable little pup and waiting for her master to come out, and I'm like, oh, that's just too cute. I gotta shoot it. You know, and there's an outside shot. You may see this in the free press one of these days, but we'll kind of work with our little pup here. One of the things I often tell photographers is to do the best you can when you take the picture. So if you're taking a picture and you don't want the icky U-Haul sign in the background like is in this picture, change it, get closer, do something different. It saves you a lot of effort on the back end to get it right when you're taking the picture in the front end. The good part of most digital cameras, and actually most cell phones, and I've been consistently and constantly amazed at the capability of cell phones now, as far as what they can do with a little bit of zoom, with exposure, brightness, contrast, all that stuff. They do an excellent job. truth be told, this photo was not shot on my iPhone, but it certainly could have been. We're gonna let's take that guy. And I'm gonna open him up in the program I use to edit pictures. This is Adobe Photoshop. There are a lot of different ways to edit photographs. Like Colin mentioned, there's a built-in Windows photo editor, which I find to be very good. Photoshop has been kind of a photographer's friend slash industry standard slash elephant in the china shop for probably 20 plus years. So most times when you are talking to somebody about image editing, this is the kind of program they're talking about. For your average photographer, it may be a little bit much, and certainly looking at it can be a little bit daunting. But when you break it down a little bit, and I'll try to break down what I use here a little bit, it's actually a fairly simple program. You have a cropping tool, which allows you to cut out certain areas of the photograph. That's a tool I use 99.9% of the time. Typically what I will do, I will start out, I will not do anything until I crop an image, until I get out all the bits I don't want in the photograph. And kind of a good rule of thumb when it comes to photographs is if it doesn't help it, it hurts it. In this case, I've got a fairly tight close-in photograph. There's not a lot I really need to worry too much about taking out of here. But one thing I will do is kind of put our little window right in the center. One of the features of Photoshop that I will point out is your crop window has these lines in it. These help illustrate a basic photography tenet called the rule of thirds. And what that says is if you divide a frame into thirds in both directions, any subject that falls at the intersection of one of those thirds will draw a person's eyes the most. Which is why I always recommend to new photographers, never, ever, 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 ever put your subject dead center in a photograph. Move them to one side or another. Now, did I follow the rule here? No, but I get to break them. I'm entitled. A person's eye is going to be naturally drawn to those. If I could get my little pup to one of those intersections, I probably would. And I could maybe even try by doing something along that line. And what I'm going to do here is double click on the frame. So there's our little pup. And I've got the photo cropped the way I want it. Now, the other thing I'll recommend, as long as we're talking about cropping, you can kind of see here how much of the picture I took away. Probably about a third of the photograph as a whole. You want to be careful about how much you take out of the photograph, because the more you take out, the lower the quality is going to be. Most digital cameras and most cell phones are shooting a pretty high quality right now.
Who's in the bedroom?
But the more the photograph you crop out, the less the quality is going to be. So you really want to be careful to get close enough to your subject and get close enough to who you want to photograph. If I really wanted this photo, I probably should have gotten closer than this. But in this case, I think the photograph the quality didn't go down a lot. So I think we're going to be okay. The next step I'll do is I'll try to do any kind of color correcting I need. So in Photoshop, there's about 7 different ways to do image correction. Typically what I will do, and what is the easiest in all of them, is I will do auto color. And as you can see, it didn't make a very significant change here because this was shot in a nice sunny, well-lit area. But you can see, and I'll undo it here for a second, you can see it got a little bit darker. What auto color is going to do is it's going to look at the photograph overall, look for any odd color contrasts, and look for neutral grays and try to make them as neutral as possible. So I got lucky here in this photograph too, in that I have this nice neutral truck window frame. That makes the computer's life a lot easier. So now when I'm done editing the photograph how I want it, this is another very important part. Remember when we were talking, I'm working on the negative. I don't want to save this photograph right now because it will save over the top of our negative. So anytime I do anything with a photograph, I will go to the file menu and go save as instead of just going to save. What that's going to do is force me to make another copy of the photograph. So this is going to be an edited copy of the photo of the original negative I created.
This is also a good spot, Pat, if you don't mind me stepping in real quick, that if you don't have a software that'll rename the pictures for you like you did, where it named a sequential order, the first edit is not always a bad time to rename the photo into what you want to manage. It does still create, like you have that original version, but if you don't have a software that'll change the sequence based on the event, your first save as is a good opportunity to rename the picture as an edit, even if you just do it before you make any changes to the picture. But I don't know if that looks like it's bothering you, or if that makes you uncomfortable, or if that's the right idea, but just
not at all.
To try that as well. If you don't have software that'll automatically sequence all your pictures, that first edit, or just the first time you open it, maybe before you make changes, is a good opportunity to do a save as, and then give it those identifying characteristics like you talked about.
Right. My workflow is such that I don't get too uncomfortable, at least doing like that, like exactly what I showed you all, just a basic crop and just a little bit of an edit before I do my first save as. I would have no problem, once you pick the photograph that you thought you wanted to edit, would be to open it up in whatever image editing program you have and start by doing this save as feature. That
way, especially with the auto saves now and the cloud updates, finding that original negative version can be really hard. Like just in a Word document alone, I have a template for our bid template for my job, and just opening it, it saves as automatically if all I've done is change who I'm going to mail it to before I can even hit a save as and change the copy name. So my bid template is constantly changing because I was like, just give me the blank one, but it saves it automatically so fast. And so I could see where, you open something, and if you can't undo, or you've cropped too much out, and then you hit save, and now you've got the original version is gone. It can get frustrating. We're like, that was the perfect one. I really liked where the dog was in that one, and I screwed up, and now I can't get back to the original. So.
And now you ruined it, which is another good reason to have a couple of copies of at least 2 copies of your work out there. Now I still have a second copy, even if I did manage to mess this up. I still have a second copy of this thing out there. I can always go back to that one and get my original negative back.
Right.
So you'll see here I renamed the photo, and I will often save edited photographs right back into the same folder that I'm taking the negatives from. That way, as I edited photos, I can still find them again. They're all in the same location. In some folks, and I know a lot of photographer friends of mine, will create another folder in here at this point and call it edited Vine event photos, and save them in there. In this case, since these photos simply have a random name on them, I'll save it right into that same folder that carries my negative that carries my original files.
So just a choice, but like you said, creating a habit or a pattern. So whether you're going to rename it and keep it in the folder, or you're going to rename the folder, just try to be consistent. Figure out which one of those is going to work for you, and then do the same thing over and over, so that in 2 years when you're looking for something, you go, oh yeah, I always keep in the same folder, or I always rename the folder.
Bedroom windows?
Yeah,
Right.
there ain't nothing of that warm air.
And it makes it easier for me, at least, if I'm working on photos from this Vine event, to resave them within that Vine event folder. If I create a whole nother folder in a whole nother location on my computer, even if I call it the same thing or call it a similar thing, it's still going to be harder to find those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
By putting them all together and keeping that all in just one folder like that, now you've got everything in one spot. When you start going to look for things, makes it so much easier.
Yep.
Questions at all about editing or how I edit a picture, or more things I could do to this photograph? I typically won't do a whole lot more than that.
How did you get to the color, the auto color?
There's an image menu that contains literally everything you need to make basic image adjustments.
Okay.
There's an image size here too. You can resize images. The auto color is there as well. There's also a place where you can manually adjust things, and that really gets into the weeds a little bit.
Okay.
But it's all in this image menu.
Okay.
And Colin, the Microsoft one's real similar, right? I think we've looked at it before. The photo, there's an image and an auto adjust, and maybe we can kind of get to that later.
Yeah.
If we have time a little bit later, I can show everybody what that one looks like. It's compared to this, it is, you know, a ball peen hammer versus a laser drill. But
sometimes you need the ball peen hammer. And
absolutely,
it
yep.
can totally work. And like I said, I only use probably about 10% of what this program is truly capable of.
And most folks also have the capability to edit right on your phone or iPad now too. Now that you really do have to be careful about editing over your original if you're making wacky changes, because it'll ask you if you want to save it, and it's gonna, you know, it will by default save over your original. So you want to be careful and back your stuff up prior to doing that. But those programs tend to be pretty intuitive and user friendly. And then there's usually a button right in those programs that you can click to share if you want to, you know, send it via email or put it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever your end goal is there.
I have been burned by that. For a 25-year professional photographer has been burned by iPhone's editing program. So yeah, that is one thing to very much watch out for, that you can ask it to save the edited version as a separate photograph, as opposed to saving over the top of your original.
Hello.
Pat, we've got a question about removing unwanted elements from the background of a photo. Is that something that you could give us a quick tutorial on, or is that going to get too complicated, you think?
I can certainly give you a quick tutorial and show you a little bit of the basics of something like that. Let me select a different photo of our little beloved pup here, and I can show you a little bit of how that works.
Maybe that one with the U-Haul logo, like you were talking about, cut that out.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
All right. So
cropping. I don't know how to, other than cropping it out, I don't know how to take images out of a layer, out of a background. So.
Well, and you know, and that's where, you know, kind of when I was talking here at the beginning, you know, about this was actually one of the early pictures I shot of this, when we were talking about doing your best to make the picture right when you're taking it. Is as much about, am I physically close enough? Am I zoomed in close enough? Is this really the subject I want in the photograph? Are there distracting elements in the background, like a giant U-Haul and a quick trip gas pump? What's out there? Typically with something like this, obviously this one would be easy enough. You want to know how to take unwanted elements out of a photograph, there you go. It's gone. But to show you just some basics, Photoshop has what's called a clone stamp tool. And what that does is allows you to take one area of the photograph and move it over to another area. So in this case, what I would do, if I wanted to even attempt to get rid of the U-Haul sign, is I would select an area of a photograph, like perhaps these trees, that would blend over that well. And how the basic process works is I've selected a brush up here that's about the size I want. Probably about that big would be a good one if I want to even start with taking that U-Haul out of there. And what you want to do is you want to select a spot and tell the program where you want to start from and what area you want to copy. So and I think Mac and PC are both the same. You hold down on a PC you hold down the control key. On a Mac I hold down the option key and I get a little target. So I'm going to tell Photoshop I'm going to click here, and that's the spot I want to start cloning from. So now as you see when I move the brush, you can kind of see I'm carrying part of that with me. So if I click and hold now, you'll see I have a little plus where I had originally clicked. That's telling me, so that's where Photoshop is going to copy from. And it's just going to copy as I move the brush. So there, I've gotten the telephone pole out of the way. I can start working on the U-Haul here a little bit. But this technique works best when you have something fairly nondescript to start with. And the other part to be careful of is if you notice, it does repeat the pattern. So you have to be careful where that little plus is as you move the brush along. I'd like to say it's as simple as that, but that's the basic technique. Then it's simply a matter of working along, and you can pick a new spot if you want some darker areas in there so it doesn't look like you've copied things. Something like that. And it would just be a matter of continuing to move along in the process. Does that answer your question?
You had in mind, or? I would have never thought that, Pat. I thought you were gonna do something totally different. That was pretty cool.
Kind of a handy thing if you happen to have a telephone pole or something simple in the way that you want to remove. A little bit more complex when you're dealing with an entire U-Haul truck. Mm-hmm. But the process is still the same, and it is a pretty powerful tool. Other questions about editing? No? All right. All right, well, we talked a little bit about, saving, we talked about editing.
Shut that light off.
we talked about saving a copy and saving in a second location. As I said, that's very important. I always use save as, and by all means, I would recommend doing it at the beginning of the process. Choosing logical names for pictures as well really makes a difference. Kind of like we did talk about that a little bit earlier, but especially if you're going to do any kind of editing with a photograph, being able to name it and find it later is helpful. I have a lot of photographs from the Free Press that are called First Day of School 1, First Day of School 2, First Day of School 3, First Day of School 4. So when I need to find a photo of the first day of school, I can probably find it fairly quickly. In fact, I could probably find you a picture I shot of the first day of school in 2002 because of that. So highly recommend thinking about how you want to name pictures and naming them logically. Once your editing process is complete, there are a lot of different ways you can share those photographs. At the Free Press, we use a service called SmugMug, which we use for reprinting all of our photographs. People can actually order a reprint of photographs that appear in the paper. It's a service that does photo printing. So you can upload those photos to that service and have prints made, have books made, have wall hangings made, literally just about anything. There's a couple of places in town, I mean, places as simple as Walgreens and CVS offer that service as well, where you can take that edited photograph and upload it on their website, and they can make prints for you. They can make little photo albums for you. I've made photo albums of trips for people. Apple offers that service, and it's a really great service and a really nice little book. If you've taken a trip with some friends and you've taken a lot of really neat pictures and you want to share it with them, doing things like that look really nice, and kind of a fun way to display your pictures as opposed to just hanging them on the wall. I know Quality 1 Hour Photo here in town has a similar service, but they will work with you to do a lot of other unique things like coffee mugs, mouse pads. They do cell phone covers, so you can put photographs on the back of your cell phone, on the back of the case of your cell phone, a myriad of different things. As you can imagine, my house is full of photographs, probably more full than some people would like, but I still kind of like the old manual print copy. It's just a nice medium to work in for me.
So Pat, you haven't mentioned, I know you said you use Apple, but I don't know if you're an iPad, iPhone, everything user, but Renee mentioned that she has copies of the same photos on her iPad, iPhone, and then transfer to the computer, and then they're in the cloud. And Colin, this might be more of a data management thing, because I have a hard time with this one too, even just in Google Photos. Like sometimes they'll be like, are you sure you want to delete this photo from all your devices? And it's like, no, I want to just delete it from this one. But and that's even like, I have Apple devices for photo management, but use Google Photos to back up stuff occasionally too. And I take a ton of boring pictures at work of like switch gears and light switches and outlets and stuff. And then like I go to, like we turn on our Apple TV and I just want this cool slideshow of my family and all the cool places we get. And I get like, oh, here's like switch gear over at Taylor Corp. And like, oh, here's a giant grain bin and here's a panel and here's a disconnect. And I'm like, oh, this is the lamest slideshow ever. But I don't know quite how to delete that, because it's like I still want those on my device for work, but I don't really need them on my device. I don't need them in the cloud and on my home computer and stuff. So just curious if there's, like I said, I'm a hot mess on several devices and in the cloud with my photo management. So It's not really pertaining to how Pat said he takes his pictures with a device and getting the computer, keeping a negative, but any tips or suggestions on iCloud and device management when there's several devices on the same account?
It's a challenge I have as well. Because I am so very cautious about losing photographs, as you can imagine. I often do. I have the same problem you have, Renee. I have multiple copies across a lot of different devices. Should you get rid of them? Sure. One of the things that works well with this process is I've now manually made a copy of this. So if I go ahead and delete these photographs on my iPhone and it deletes them across all my devices, I know I have that backup someplace. I know I have those original files somewhere. If it's not like Trevor's example where if you don't want to have them on your phone anymore to be able to show people, making manual backups like this gives you the opportunity to feel like you can remove them safely without losing them forever and ever and ever. Amen. I will often go through my iPhone, and actually I can use Photo Mechanic to do it. Is I can go through my iPhone and my iPad and click through the photographs I know I either have backed up or want to remove of things pictures of my shoes or my dog or whatever, and remove them from the device and remove them from the cloud backup, knowing that I have a copy of them on my external hard drive at home.
So one thing I also want to mention to folks real quick, because if you're trying to remove unwanted doubles from your computer, you'll notice that I made a couple of quick copies here, and when you don't change the file name, the computer is going to automatically assign a parenthetical number to any copies or doubles. So one thing I could do is just go through and delete anything with one of those parenthetical numbers. So let's say this was much worse, right? Then I could go through and just select one. And on a PC, if you hold Control on your keyboard while you click, you can select multiples, and you can do it selectively throughout a list. So if I wanted to delete all of these, but not all of these, I could select those and then right click and delete them. And then another thing you can do is if you're trying to search a ton of files, we've got this search bar up here. And so you can do what's called a wildcard search, where you're going to just populate an asterisk in the search bar. That's going to tell the computer that it's going to be looking for anything, including what you follow afterwards. So a lot of times in IT, we use that to search for file extensions. So if we're just looking for executables, we would do .exe. But then you can also do a wildcard search in a 2, and it's going to show you everything. Well, maybe not. But yeah, looking for those parentheticals is a really good way to do it. I don't know about iPhoto, but I do know that I take a lot of pictures of product keys and serial numbers in my day-to-day work. And with my Google Photos, it'll pop up every once in a while and say, hey, these look like pictures of text. Do you want to archive them or delete them? Because it figures that, it would never ask that about the picture of your grandkids, but it can pick up on the fact that you're taking a picture of a receipt or a label off of something, and that's probably not something you're going to want to look at in 5 years.
Well, and Colin and Pat, between the two of you, I think you could answer the question on the idea. I don't remember exactly what the number was, Pat, was like several 100,000 pictures you could fit on a 4 terabyte hard drive. And there was a mention, Colin mentioned on the formatting of large JPG or RAW, which might have gone over the heads of most casual photographers. But when we're talking about data management and picture quality, there is a direct correlation there on just like when you send an attachment, it says you want to send it small, medium, large, or actual size of the picture. The size and quality of the picture are directly correlated, that you could probably store, I wouldn't know, 10 times or exponentially the amount of pictures if they're in a smaller format, which I know Google and iCloud will do automatically. If you don't override it, it'll say we're going to store the most efficient version of this picture so that you can put exponentially more pictures in a terabyte worth of space. So there's something to be said too about the formatting of the picture and the amount of space or the amount of data that occupies. And at some point, hundreds of thousands of pictures in a terabyte, like a normal person's probably never going to even come close to maxing that out, depending on the format of the picture, I suppose.
Right. And the one thing I would recommend as far as that goes, and something that I end up instructing a lot of people that are submitting photos to the free press frequently, is being able to save those photos, or being able to send those photos in as close to original size as possible. It would be like cutting off 1/3 of your 35 millimeter negative in order to fit it in an envelope. With data, with storage space not being as big an issue price-wise or space-wise or technology-wise as it once was, it really is a good idea to save those photos as close to the original size as possible. Now, of course, when you're sending them and sharing them, and it gives you those options in your emails, depending on the end user, it's certainly fine to send it in a smaller size so that it goes through quicker, that it's easier to handle. But when it comes down to how you're going to save them, whether you're going to save them in the cloud or save them on an external hard drive, from my perspective as not just a professional photographer, but of a person that likes to look at nice, crisp, clean, good-looking pictures, saving it as close to that full size as possible is important.
Colin, we have a couple minutes left. Do you want to throw up the Microsoft Photo Editor and just show the pin hammer version of Adobe Photoshop, I guess, real quick?
Yep, I don't have too many pictures on my computer, as you see, but this will be everybody's compensation for not having my webcam today.
I miss your face, Colin.
I was gonna say, I bet you can find a picture of yourself in there somewhere.
So this is the Microsoft Photo Viewer. It's the default photo app in Windows 10. And this is just going to be a real simple, if you remember on Windows 7, just a real simple interface to look at your photos. Now you can rotate and do a couple other very simple things right from this view window. The zoom is not going to necessarily have an impact on the picture. It's not going to change the file. It's just going to expand your view of it. But some of these other things, like the rotate, if I wanted to invert it like that and I closed it, now we can see that this thumbnail is going to be rotated a little bit. So that is going to change. Same thing with the crop. We saw the crop tool being used earlier in Photoshop. This is a very similar type of thing. We're just going to use our box here to do a nice even crop. And then we can, from here, we can save a copy. So it says right here, it's not going to change the original. We can save it over the original, which we don't recommend doing, obviously. So we're just going to hit save a copy. And now we've got that cropped photo. Now if you go up to this edit and create button, it's going to give you a couple different options. For most people, the edit is going to be all you really need. unless you want to get really crazy. For edit, let's go back to one that's a little higher resolution here. We've got some different things we can, flip it if we're into the mirrored look here. We can change the aspect ratio, which is going to automatically change our cropping there.
Well, aspect ratios are important for printing pictures. You want to make sure you
Yep.
have aspect ratio that matches the size of the picture that you're going to print. So whether it's a 10 by 10 calendar or a 16 by 9 calendar, whatever it is, you want your aspect ratio of how you crop the picture to match.
Yep. If you've got a photo that wasn't taken on a nice tripod, like this one was, the straightening bar will give you a chance to straighten it out however you want it, or maybe you'd like it to be a little bit cockeyed there. Then there's filters. Everybody loves their Instagram filters now. You've got ready-made ones from Microsoft to change up. You used to need to use gels or exposure tricks in the darkroom, but now you can do this stuff very quickly. If you're feeling like some kind of a sepia throwback or a spooky Matrix vibe, you can change those. The enhancement, I think, is going to be really just a really rudimentary sharpness tool, and it's going to be based on the data that's present there.
And that's a high resolution picture to begin with, so the enhancement's not gonna show you much.
This one I just copied off of our website, so it's probably reduced from where it once was, but
You're just that naturally good looking.
that's right. And then we can make there's light and darkness, contrast, and color sliders here. We can change the clarity if we want to make it a little more grainy or a little softer. The vignette is gonna soften the edges. It's gonna give you, old school photographers would use burn-in. So it'll give you more definition towards the center, and then the outside will either look like it's been overexposed or underexposed. You got your red eye fix, which will automatically correct red eye. There's no red eye in this, but it'll just paint it out. It'll use a RGB filter on it. And then the spot fix, I think, is just a real simple version of the blending tool. I'm not entirely sure how much of a difference it's going to make, or even I'm not entirely sure what I would even be fixing here, but it's something you can play around with, and then be sure to, of course, save a copy. Don't save the original. We'll do one last thing here. Windows 10 has also got these draw and 3D effects. So if you really want to get crazy with it, you can open up these 3D programs, which you could use to send to somebody in AR or somebody who had a VR headset. If it's even gonna do it.
Does it need an extension, Colin?
Oh yeah, it might need an app that I haven't downloaded. Otherwise, if you select draw, then it'll basically open a real simple version of like the old MS Paint here. You can choose what colors you want, the size of your lines, and we could draw a little mustache.
And I think Facebook's doing this now. They're adding those like banners, so they take a picture and then they post-production add like a banner to the picture. So like if you're making a camera or something and you wanted to type in the font, like you're making a calendar and you want that picture to say "Happy Birthday, Dad" or whatever, like you could do that in this picture as adding text or graphics, and then have that printed on the calendar versus, or if you wanted to send a digital file, you could do that as well. So little things that you know, you either let the picture speak for itself, and the 1/3 tip, I'd never heard that before, and you make me wish I could go back and recrop all the pictures I don't have the originals anymore of. But like it is a way that you could give a direct version of writing on the picture to indicate what it is, rather than letting the picture speak for itself. The picture speaks for 1,000 words. You could literally put 5 or 6 words on there if you needed it to. But I think that's about it. Pat, a wonderful job. It's really neat that we've never met, and that and co-teaching this class together went so well. You're obviously very skilled at what you do, and I'll be looking for your name in the credits of my free press pictures from now on.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, Colin, great job as usual, directing the technology and answering all those hard questions. Tom, great to see you again. Renee, Mavis, Betty. Mike, thanks for hosting us. It is 7 o'clock, so I don't know, Pat, do you have a few minutes to stick around if anybody has any questions? Or
Yeah, I got a few minutes. I can stick around if anybody has any questions. Happy to answer them.
all right, so if anybody wants to shoot, Tom, you're usually good for a question or two. If anybody wants to throw something out. Otherwise, I got some leftover stew to heat up at home. I'm just gonna get on the road.
I do have a question, so I saved my files to, but dumb questions, where do I go find them and how do I get them back?
Once
Say
you
that one more.
Go ahead, Pat.
I've saved my files, my pictures to Google, and I buy their storage space on that, but where do I find them and how do I get them back on my PC?
So how do you access photos from Google once you save them into Google? How do you access them again so you can use them?
So I'm conscious of the fact that this is going to be recorded and put out on YouTube, but we'll try to do this without doxing myself here. So if you're signed into your Google account, what you want to do is click on here, and you can go to Photos. And your photos are going to be arranged. You're familiar with this screen, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. So these are all the photos that are in my cloud. We got some of the family out at the prairie here. So let's say I wanted to download this one. I can select it here, go to the dots, and hit download. And same with in Windows Explorer. If you hold Control, or you don't even need to hold Control, you can just select multiples and go through that way, and then download multiples there. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
When you click download, it'll give you a location so that you can re-verify where it is from the Google Drive.
Yeah, it'll automatically do it in a zip file. It's going to put it in your downloads folder by default, unless you have Google Chrome set up to do something differently. But if you click this little arrow and hit show in folder, it's going to show your photo right there. It'll open it up in Explorer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually use that Google Photos feature at the Free Press fairly regularly. Kind of as I was going through my process, we were talking about resaving photos after we've edited them. I will save them in a folder out on a Google Drive, where reporters can access them and use them in other ways other than just in the paper. So I will save a copy for them to use on Facebook to promote their story, or on other social media or something like that. Actually kind of a handy way to share photos.
Good.
All right. Al, thanks for coming. I'm glad you had a good first class. Good to see you, and hope we can see you again in October, November. Anybody else?
Yep. I hope so. See you again.
Fantastic. I'm glad you got something out of it. These classes are always tough, and doing them virtually, when we get to do them at the Vine, I like them a lot better when we really get to interact and see people and move around the room and physically be around each other. But I'm glad the Zoom conferences are working and that people are getting stuff out of them. That makes us feel good. I'm glad we're still doing them. So thanks for coming.
Good. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Sure. Pat, you're welcome anytime. We do this photography sometimes twice a year, so it's a good time. We usually do it around the holidays so that everybody can start getting their Halloween and Christmas pictures and figure out how to edit them and get them back up. So perfect timing this year. Maybe we'll hit them again in the spring. So
Sounds good. Yeah, anytime you guys want to have me back, I'm glad to do it.
great. You did a great job.
Yeah, thanks a ton, Pat. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You bet.
Very
Thank you
good.
guys for all your efforts today. It made it a lot easier. I didn't have to run everything in the Zoom meeting. So
Yeah, it's a good partnership. We love having the guest speakers. Colin and I do a pretty good job. We put a lot of these on, but it's always neat to see how much of them roll over and connect. Like I said, between the safety and the backups and using the internet and how we can use that now for a little bit more fun recreational activity, but still have to be concerned about the safety and the backups and the online access. So everything kind of ties together, but this one's a little bit more relaxing than having to worry about what's going to happen if somebody gets hold of your computer or something like that. So these are
right,
cool.
right, definitely. Well, again, thanks a lot, everybody. I'm glad we had some good questions too. So thanks a lot for all of those.
Absolutely. All right, Colin, I think you can stop the recording and keep an eye out for the newsletter. We'll be working with Mike to see what the best October topic we can come up with is. So look forward to seeing everybody then.
All right. So long, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Thanks.
Yep.
Are you sleeping?
No, I'm done. I'm done.